Video games really haven't been around for a long time, right? Well, a long time as compared to other forms of entertainment, like music or plays. I'm not trying to say that the Atari video computer system being around for nearly 45 years isn't significant. What I am saying is, in terms of human history, video games make a pretty small impact, but in terms of recent lifetimes, they've made a huge one. Seriously, there's a tremendous difference between, say, my parents, who can recount the first time they saw a computer and how it took up a whole room, and me, a person who literally can't remember a time where there wasn't at least 2 computers and a few stacks of good old CD-ROMs in the house. I'm saying all this because gaming anniversaries tend to hit people like me out of nowhere. Last year being the 35th anniversary of the Super Mario Bros. Was an impossible concept to someone who raced with those brothers, and partied with those brothers, and jumped all over the place with those brothers, and exercised a bunch of mansions with those brothers for pretty much her whole life. And hey, if you didn't grow up with the bros like I did, I'm sure these anniversaries bother you just as much because they basically function as those annoying 23 things to make you feel old BuzzFeed articles. But at least these anniversaries come with some benefits, like ports of old games popping up on new consoles, new merchandise for all fans of the franchise, and a few incredibly fun, unique ideas. Like, I know this isn't marketed to me, but you have no idea how much joy I feel when I see these in stores. And it's great that there's some good in these milestones because there's approximately 1 million anniversaries coming up this year. Castlevania, Dragon Quest, and Zelda are turning 35, Sonic's rocking his 30th birthday, 1,000 franchises are going to be 25, and Devil May Cry and Pikmin are hitting their 20s. In amongst all these titans of gaming, however, is what I wanted to talk about today. This year marks the 25th anniversary of a cute little franchise you might have heard of before that goes by the name of Pokemon. Now, Pokemon is just a little important to me. You know, if you grow up while watching several seasons of the show, playing most of the main series games, owning a bunch of the figures and a few plushies, hanging a map of your favorite region on the wall, and literally spending most of your free time playing these 2 games over and over again as a kid, it might have some kind of effect on you. I absolutely love Pokemon, but immersing yourself in a franchise like this leaves you wanting something different. Like, imagine eating the same breakfast every day for your whole life. Eventually, even if it's something you enjoy, you're gonna get tired of it and want something else, or at least to change it a little bit. I enjoy playing Pokemon games a lot, but the story is virtually the same every time, the gameplay is always extremely linear, and don't get me wrong, I love the adorable 3D models, but I sometimes yearn for the flat, stylized animations from the days of old. It's difficult to find this kind of thing when one series seems to dominate the entire monster catching and battling genre, but luckily I found something that I really enjoy. It isn't exactly what I wanted, but it checks just enough new boxes that Pokemon hasn't in the past, and it absolutely immersed me in its colorful and varied world, surprisingly non-linear gameplay, and completely unique story that Pokemon of the past wouldn't dare to tell. So, if you're a lover of Pokemon looking for something a little different, a player who's sick of Pokemon's formula but still wants to catch and battle monsters, or a complete newbie to the genre, you should play Nexomon Extinction. Nexomon Extinction is a monster-catching game developed by VEWO Interactive, published by P-Cube, and released on Steam, PlayStation, and the Switch on August 28, 2020. It's also worth it to mention here that this game is technically a sequel, but it really isn't necessary to play the first one to understand Extinction. I straight up haven't heard of Nexomon until this game, probably because the prequel was on iOS, and while a lot of the plot of the first game is mentioned, everything is laid out in such a way that anyone new to the series can perfectly understand what happened in the past, as well as the brand new events in Extinction. So the game starts with a flash forward, don't worry about that, it's no big deal. You wake up as an orphan on the biggest day of your life, the day you're going to become a Nexomon tamer and start working with the guild. Typical stuff, someone will give us our first Nexomon and we can start our journey. Or not, we'll just catch our first Nexomon, that's fine. So let's just go up here and find our first cute little friend, And there's a giant terrifying dragon, and this lady that shows up in our mine gives us our first critter to fight the dragon, and we can't beat it, so we hide in this tomb of this ghost who teaches us how to capture a Nexomon. Perfectly normal, I see nothing wrong with this. We scoot back to the orphanage to be told that we're no longer safe there, whatever that means. And we have to go to the big city of Parum to start our adventure. Here we become members of the guild whose only goal is to valiantly protect the world from violent Nexomon, especially the giant, all-powerful tyrants who aim to destroy literally all of humanity. Sounds like the perfect job for a 15-year-old to me. As you can probably tell, this game takes a much more realistic stance than Pokemon ever has. Pokemon plots have always focused on friendship and working hard towards your goals, while traversing an interesting but never too dangerous world, so you can finally be the master of the trade. But that's about as far as the games have taken the story. Sure, there have been a few changes that I have enjoyed throughout the years, like in Black and White, where the bad guys question the morality of capturing and battling Pokemon, or in Sword and Shield, where the adults around you finally tell you to run along and enjoy your adventure instead of relying on a 10-year-old to deal with all these dangerous things. But these tiny changes all cycle back to the same old story, where Black and White's ethics discussion is pushed aside and the grown-ups still have to count on you to actually fix things in Sword and Shield. Nexomon Extinction swings right away from the friendship angle and straight into the dangers a world like this would actually face. Cities are constantly being destroyed by giant monsters and their self-centered owners who want to rule the world. Certain areas that are hit worse than others constantly lack resources and become overrun by bandits. Some people worship the guild because they live in the few places that are still safe, whereas others won't even speak to you if you have a guild badge and prefer to rely on spears and firepower over Nexomon battles. Even then, though, some of the people who hate you will still help you as long as you pay them a good enough price. And ultimately, capturing and battling Nexomon isn't a question of whether forcing these creatures to fight is right or wrong. It's a question of survival. Without the help of Nexomon, humanity would already be destroyed by other, stronger Nexomon. So becoming a tamer is less of a charming, coming-of-age journey and more of a necessity of the horrible times you happen to be born into. The characters you meet along the way aren't always upbeat and positive. Many of them look down on you as a weaker guild member and will straight up tell you as much to your face. Some tamers you meet will be kind to you before and after battling you. Others will take verbal shots at you before battle and after battle if you beat them, and they'll do it again if you rematch them. Even the characters that are on your side from the start take nearly every opportunity to remind you how dangerous the world is and how most efforts to save it are going to be futile. You might be thinking that all this is pretty depressing for a cutesy creature capturing game, and you'd be right. This is why Nexomon ties up this terrifying package of a story with a big shiny bow of snark. It brings me right back to the good old GameCube days. The protagonist you play as is mute, so most of the commentary on the world around you comes from your cat friend Coco, and boy is he sassy, sarcastic, and cynical. Coco is essentially the voice of the player in this game, asking questions like, why is this allowed? Why are all the adults hiding things? Why are all the kids stupid? Why are you going the wrong way when the plot told you to go that way? Why are you breaking into people's houses? This meta-humor is weirdly perfect in this genre, and sort of makes you feel as if your voice as a gamer is being heard, even though you aren't really having a conversation with the developers. Better than the fourth wall breaking is the snarky humor that I mentioned before. It really is reminiscent of games like Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door and Luigi's Mansion, that are rude for basically no reason. I won't show any footage from it, but there's a later point in the game where you have a language barrier between you and a new area. But instead of an actual language, it's obviously just keyboard smashing. Then, when you can find a translator, you basically learn that the people there have the intelligence you would assume from a group with a language based off of keyboard smashing. Jokes and ridiculousness aside, I really enjoyed this game's story. Since I came at this game assuming it would just be a Pokemon clone, it surprised me in a bunch of different ways. There are some twists and turns thrown in there that I truly did not see coming. And there's a good balance of making fun of the genre and improving on it, so the delivery of some of the jokes doesn't feel too hypocritical. And honestly, the story stuck with me because of how often I would think Pokemon would never do this with each plot point and joke. Speaking of things Pokemon would never do, Nexomon Extinction gives the player a lot of freedom in where they can go right from the start of the game. Seriously, right after I got through this whole dragon thing, the characters told me to go back to the orphanage to get my next task, but I just hung out and caught Nexomon for a while. Then the game was like, hey, go this way for the plot, and being the gamer that I am, I naturally turned the other direction to see if there's a secret in one of the paths I'm not supposed to go on. Then I find this cool forest, and Coco even tells me I don't think this is the right way. But I catch more Nexomon and fight more tamers and beat up these guild guys and find an entire city full of ghosts, and sure, I can't really do anything there yet, but it is so incredibly satisfying as someone who expects strictly linear gameplay from this type of game to find out that you can actually just go to a place if you want to. The creepy forest, the paradise island, the dry desert, and the frozen mountain are all places you can explore without having a reason to go there. The characters in these places will even tell you how surprised they are to see you, a low-ranking tamer, in a difficult place like this. I spent the first 10 hours of my playthrough just running around, catching critters, fighting random people, and just exploring the world laid out before me. After this point, I was grossly overleveled for the first half of the story, and I'd seen a good chunk of the areas I had yet to visit as a guild tamer, and yet there were still a bunch of new areas to go into, including tiny caves and entire towns, so there were plenty of surprises left in the game. The main gameplay that I'm talking about, of course, is all about catching and battling Nexomon. Now, I'm gonna get one thing out of the way before I go into details about types and the catching system, and the way you'll fight other tamers. Extinction varies from Pokemon in two major ways. There's no breeding system and there's no multiplayer. If you want an Nexomon, you gotta catch it. And if you want to battle someone, you're gonna have to settle for the tamers that are already programmed into the game. For some Poke fans, that's a total deal breaker, but for me it's absolutely perfect. Give me just the catching, battling, and story, please and thanks. Okay, back to the Nexomon. There are 9 types of Nexomon, half of the 18 that Pokemon currently has, and each individual Nexomon only has one type. This makes the whole battling thing more simple, but also more confusing, so let me explain. The types in Nexomon are as follows: normal, fire, water, plant, wind, electric, mineral, ghost, and psychic. These can pretty easily be translated into Pokemon types that we know and love, but the issue is that the type chart is different. For example, in Pokemon, the rock type is super effective against flying, and while mineral is basically rock and wind is pretty much flying, wind is actually super effective against mineral. So that's confusing, but at least each Nexomon only has one type. See, in Pokemon, a Pokemon can be 2 types at once, and an attack being used against them will have a different effectiveness than if they were just one type. For example, if a fire-type move is used on a grass-type Pokemon, it deals 2 times the damage. But if it's both grass and bug-type, it would deal 4 times the damage. This makes things super complicated when it comes to fighting all the different Pokemon, and it's probably the reason why the most recent games just tell you whether a move is effective or not. With Nexomon, this is a lot simpler. A move is either effective, meaning it does more damage than a different type of move would do, neutral, or not effective, meaning it does less damage. If this doesn't make all that much sense to you, basically it takes a type chart that looks something like this and squishes it down to something like this. Also, Nexomon only has an attack and defense stat rather than the Pokemon's special attack, defense, and special defense. So all you have to do is pick an attack and use it without worrying about which type of defense the enemy Nexomon has. Okay, so while the actual battling is made easier, Nexomon Extinction spices things up by making the catching process a bit more complex. In Pokemon, you lower the health, maybe plop a status effect on there, throw a ball, and cross your fingers. In Nexomon, you actually see what affects the chance you're going to catch the critter. Lowering health is good, a status effect is better, using a compatible Nexo trap helps a lot, and you can also feed the Nexomon to increase the chance you'll catch them. Elemental Nexo traps are super helpful in this game, I would say even more so than the variety of balls available in Pokemon, so you have to gather elemental shards from across the land to be able to craft them. There's also a lot more golden Nexo traps than, the one Master Ball you get in any given Pokemon game, so you can just chuck one of those bad boys at a creature you like and know it won't get away from you. No matter what techniques you choose to use, you also have to hit some corresponding buttons within a time limit to catch the critter, so catching feels way more interactive than the throw and hope method of Pokemon. Nexomon's gameplay rests mostly on those 2 points of battling and catching, but it also adds in some trading opportunities and side quests that are pretty fun. NPCs throughout the world will trade you valuable items like elemental Nexo traps, potions, and other things you may need for items you have on hand or things you can commonly buy from wandering merchants or established shops. Characters that have side quests will give you more valuable items, like the golden Nexo traps I mentioned earlier, and these vault keys that open secret treasure-filled vaults scattered through the caves in the world. But they'll need more crucial things done, like catching and giving them specific Nexomon or finding an item that they've lost. These tasks aren't especially difficult, but they give you a little break from the bleak main story and leave room for a few more jokes, and pretty much every single one is worth completing. Now, there are a few other bits of gameplay in Nexomon that I found interesting. Some I really enjoyed and some I didn't, but I think I'll leave those bits as things you can discover on your own. I don't want to reveal all the surprises in the game's story, so it's only fair that I also leave a few hidden gems of gameplay behind. Speaking of hidden gems, the design of this game is incredibly well done, which surprised me. I don't know why, as I've covered mostly indies on this channel and some of my favorite games are indies, but I never really expect indie games to sound or look just as good as AAA titles. The sound design Nexomon has is pretty much on par with Pokemon. There's a Nexomon's cry here, a nice beep boop of confirmation there, and while I didn't expect the music in this game to be this good, what surprised me more was the sheer number of tracks within it. Pretty much every new area has different background music that perfectly suits it, from the serene calm of the snowy mountain to the grand walls of the capital city, even to the healing center music, which is so completely Pokemon without actually being Pokemon. Nexomon also nails the Pokemon aesthetic from generations 4 and 5, that's Diamond and Pearl as well as Black and White for those not up on their Pokemon info, where the overworld and characters look more like Gen 4, and the actual Nexomon designs look more like Gen 5, complete with a similar animation style. Honestly, every Nexomon design of this game is creative and looks good, though as usual, the plant designs are my favorite. And the legendaries look pretty dang legendary. I also really like that some of the designs look like they could belong in a Pokemon game, but plenty of the ghost designs in particular actually lean to a darker side than Pokemon's designs typically do. The amount of polish on Nexomon Extinction's design reflects how great the story and gameplay are as well, and it really becomes a fantastic monster battling package without becoming a Pokemon clone. While video game anniversaries may not be important to some, I think they are perfect opportunities to reflect on the progress a series has made. While I've loved Pokemon from a very young age, I think a lot of die-hard fans would agree with me that the series has problems, especially in relying so heavily on a formula that makes all the games feel super similar. Don't get me wrong, when the Diamond and Pearl remakes are announced, I'll grab onto them for dear life and I'll probably love them to death. But if I want something different, I'm learning that looking elsewhere is going to be the only way to find it. The bleak but humorous story, different but not foreign gameplay, and nostalgic yet polished design of Nexomon Extinction have all cemented the game in my collection as a fantastic Pokemon game without being a AAA title.